how can newly promoted football clubs such as Burnley, Middlesbrough and Hull become more attractive to these foreign spectators worldwide?
I think style of play is important. I mean, Middlesbrough. Did you mention Middlesbrough as one of them?
Yes.
You know, I think you do have to. It's difficult for a coach, and Hajj Karanka's actually lost his job. You know, he's had good results over the years, but I think basically the club know that it's not enough just to survive in this league. It's a league that depends on entertainment from 1 to 20. If people tune into Spanish football, they expect, if they tune into a Barcelona match, they expect to be entertained by Barcelona. When people tune into an English match, they're looking for something different. They want to be entertained by the match. They want to be entertained by both teams. They will tune into a Chelsea match because they know that Burnley might just beat them. And Middlesbrough are just a little bit too predictable and too happy to have a 0-0 rather than risk everything for a 5-3. And I think so. That's one thing you mustn't overlook, is the necessity to entertain, because the English football isn't popular all over the world. The English elite league is not popular all over the world because people like English accents. It's popular because it's competitive, and I think you've got to be competitive and entertaining. I think that's where Burnley, have handled it so well, because they have beaten top clubs. They've shown that they're not an easy pushover, particularly on their own ground.
Is it possible for newly promoted clubs to close the gap between them against football clubs that are regularly safe in the league and known under the brand of the Premier League?
Yeah.
So roughly kind of like Stoke City, like the ones that have just made it but now are considered a Premier League brand.
Yes, I think that it's still a problem. I think you have to be fair to the Premier League. We're in halcyon days. We have a top six. I've never known there'd be a top six in English football before. Since the Premier League started, there'd be top two, Man United, Arsenal. There's been a top two, Man United, Chelsea. There's been a top two, Man United, top three, Man United, Chelsea, Man City. Man City came in. I used to think a top three was pretty good, but we've now got a top six for the first time since the Premier League started. But obviously the ideal is to have a top 8 and eventually have a top 20, and this is really what you were talking about. You were talking about can a club come into the Premier League, survive and close that gap? I don't know, but the policies of the Premier League are really paying off. It's the most, apart from Germany, it's the most egalitarian of the big leagues. Doesn't pay too much of a differential to the teams that are more popular with the television audience. It's quite enlightened in those policies, but I think it has to make sure that the Premier League continues to share the revenue as generously as possible, and to resist any sort of further elitism. So I think that would help. At the moment, it is very, very difficult. Stoke City I'm glad you brought up the subject of Stoke City, because they're a club who've got financial backing, fairly rich family own them, the Coateses, and they don't have a particularly big ground, but they've been signing players from Barcelona, maybe not the top ones, but not Lionel Messi, but Affalay and Boyan, people like that. So Stoke have given it a good go, but and you really wouldn't want to expect them to be relegated. So in a sense, they've done that. Probably the best example would have been Leicester, but how can you explain Leicester? They win the League One year, then they're threatened with relegation, and they look like world champions again. So I don't know what with Leicester, but I mean they certainly closed that gap. I don't know how many years since they got promoted that they won the league, but I think it was only 3 years, wasn't it? Something like that. 3 or 4 years. So it can be done, but it is very, very difficult unless the Premier. It will be impossible if the Premier League don't keep an eye on differentials and don't allow big clubs to claim a greater share of the television revenue.
Should all newly promoted football clubs exploit globalisation if they want a better chance of survival in the Premier League?
Yes, definitely. I mean, you can only expand so far in your own country. I mean, I think that what you're not going to get is, let's say you're a Stoke or a Southampton, you're not going to be able to set up an office in Manchester and recruit fans. It's just not going to happen. But if you become successful, I mean, for example, at the moment there are a lot of Leicester fans in Malaysia, for obvious reasons. But you've got a better chance of expanding across the world. I mean, Chelsea. Now, you wouldn't be surprised if you went I wasn't surprised, but I was cycling through a village in Vietnam, and a couple of kids in full Chelsea strips were walking down the street. But Chelsea, 15 years ago, were a nothing club. 20 years ago, they were nothing, weren't even in the top division. So you can take advantages, and you can build a horrible word, but you can build a brand through using globalisation much more quickly. Chelsea before globalisation would not have been able to expand the way they have done as a worldwide institution. Which takes us back to the tour of Blackpool. You can't tour of Sierra Leone. You can't be doing that every 10 minutes. So globalisation does at least make that more fruitful. It's becoming internationally popular.